What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I didn't make much videos lately because I felt that we've been bombarded with information left and right, so I did not want to overwhelm you guys with more information. However, I woke up this morning, something happened in my life, and I got inspired / agitated to make this video about a content that is very close to my heart, that I think that we need to start talking about, because we are the change. I hope you bear with me, and although I know that you've been bombarded with a lot of information, this topic is a little bit different though. So hopefully you can stay with me, and hopefully you find this topic useful to you. I'm calling this video "We Are the Change," as opposed to "Be the Change" that we keep hearing a lot, especially lately. Mainly because when we say "be the change," two things happen. First of all, we are, whether we know it or not, subconsciously we are giving the responsibility still to somebody else, because we say "be the change." And that is one of the problems that we've had over these past decades and whatnot, that we always tend to give responsibility to others to change, not us. But in actuality, it is us that need to change. The second thing that happens when we say "be the change" is that we put it in the future. It is as if we are waiting for something to happen in the future, which is also not true. So that's why I think that calling it "we are the change" put us right into the right mindset. And here are the questions that we can ask ourselves in order to challenge our perception that we've built over the years based on the information that has influenced us since we were kids. Some of these questions are: why should, for example, characteristics that I have been given in society determine my life, determine who I am, or determine who I want to be? Why should I be able to give characteristics to somebody else that would actually, in actuality, it would limit their way of living. It would limit their perception as to the type of life that they want to live, or the type of life that they want to choose for themselves to live in. For example, we were always told that there are only specific type of people who are smart who should go into fields of tech or sciences, or there are certain type of gender or nationality who are better at math, for example, than others. That's bullshit. I have done research when I was doing research assistant for other professors who actually looked at that topic, and that's all nonsense. It's all the mindset that we have been taught. And that is what we mean when we say we are the change, because we are able to not only shatter our own perception regarding those notions, and math is just one example of it, but also we can influence the future generation, but by actually getting into those fields and making a change and influencing others. The future generation should not accept these shitty perception. That's the bottom line. If we have not learned anything in 2020, we have learned one thing: governments don't produce anything. All they do is to set regulations and try to enforce it. But in actuality, if you look at it, none of them produce anything. Most of them, they don't have tech or science background. They don't produce anything. The people who produce, the people who invent, the people who create, the people who build are you. They are the entrepreneurs. There are people who are actually living day to day, and they are making stuff happen. It's not the government. Governments just sit up there based on the type of money that they have, and they just make regulations. We are the change. We can change that by making decisions in 2020, even if it's really hard. A lot of us are going through a lot of challenging times, but the fact is that a lot of education is already on YouTube. A lot of them are for free. So we really don't need a lot of money like we did maybe 10 years ago to teach ourselves to self-educate. And we can do that because we are the next generation and we will be able to make a difference. I don't think our generation will be okay with the type of corruption that we've seen in governments, in all governments globally, I have to say, and in corporations that we've seen so far. In 2020, a lot of them got exposed, and I think our generation is in a really good spot. Our generation is in a really good spot to make those decisions, learn from the mistake of the past generation, and to get up, self-educate, and get into these influential positions. Hopefully, we will not be as corrupted as our parents or as our previous generation were. If you look at the financial institution, Federal Reserve, governments, big corporation, overpaid CEOs, etc. If you self-educate in macroeconomics, very shortly you will notice that much of what the government does, along with Federal Reserve, which is not part of the government, by the way, and all the overpaid CEOs, it is so unfair that they just take us for they just take it for granted. Like, what I meant to say was that they just take us for granted, like we're stupid, like we don't get it. But I believe that our generation has the power to self-educate enough so that we can get into those positions of power. We need to get more into tech. We need to get more into sciences. And we need to get more into macroeconomics, because so far, this old generation, they've made a lot of great decisions, but also a lot of bad ones. And that's why we are where we are at today. But the next generation can be the change. We are the change, and we don't have to put up with all that. We can get into those positions of power. So far, money has determined a lot of things. The lobbying, which pretty much is a legalized bribery, has infiltrated the government, most of governments. And because of that, they tend to make decisions, government tend to make decisions that are more in lines with what the corporate wants. Most of which has nothing to do with humanity. That's why we are where we are today. If you look at climate changes and whatnot, whether you believe it or not, you can still see some of the ramification of those bad decisions. And so it would be naive to think that the government is there to help us. It would be naive to think that the government is just for humanity. They are not. It's for profit. It's for money. They may pretend that they are there for us. They may pretend that they are there to save us. But I've got news for you. They don't. Even the ones who promise things, history has shown over and over and over and over again that at the end of the day, the corruption rules, and the decisions that are made mainly are more geared towards those corrupted financial corporate decisions as opposed to humanity. And we can change that. Our generation might not be able to do anything today, but if we start today, we start educating ourselves in tech, sciences, politics, and whatnot, and we keep being good human beings with morals, in the future, we'll be able to penetrate in those positions and be less corrupt, hopefully not corrupt at all. The reason these corruptions and these influence are even worse than we think, is that once the governments are so corrupted and they are not moving towards humanity but against it, they might sound like they are moving towards humanity but they're against it, the media, the type of information that the type of messages that they keep bombarding us since we were kids, that start influencing people as well. So as a result, you have this vicious cycle where influential people are not really there for humanity, and they're influencing everything else, including media, including schools, including all the type of information that we get since we were kids. And so we become grown-ups with a totally influenced perception that was not ours to begin with. And that is a problem. And so as an adult, it becomes 100% our own responsibility to take action towards brainwashing ourselves so that we get away from the things that we were taught since we were kids, most of which were probably was corrupted because of the teachings, because of the corrupted governments that we were in. And so it is definitely a vicious cycle. So the notion of that we say we are the change puts that responsibility back into our own lap. And also, it's nothing that we talk about in the future. It's actually now. And each and every one of us have access to free knowledge out there on YouTube, on blogs, you name it, that we can literally re-educate our minds. That re-education of our minds will be to such an extent so that we can take these steps towards humanity, these steps towards making better decisions for our lives, for our future, and for Earth in general. We need more activists. And when we say activists, we immediately think about these hippies who run around in the forest and they chain themselves to the trees. That's not the type of activist I mean, although you can be one that if you want. I just can't do it because I'm more of a tech and science activist. But when I say activist, I mean the type of activist that I just talked about. Tech activists, science activists, political activists, but in a way that we are educated enough so that we could make long-lasting changes without becoming too emotional and without becoming violent, physically, emotionally, mentally, that we have seen so far, especially in 2020. We don't need that. What we can do as an activist who is educated, a tech activist, science activist, is to get into those fields, build stuff that are good for humanity, lobby those stuff, and have a vision for how we want our future Earth to be. Some of us may choose to go out on the street and riot and whatnot. Some of us are not cut out for it. And so we can choose to build knowledge, build wealth, build good health so that we can influence the future. We can be part of the government, we can be part of this corporation to make better decisions. So I'm here to urge you to take actions, to think about it and then take actions. For me, my independence is very important to me because when I started doing my postdoc, I did not want to be dependent on other people's fundings or other institutions or other corporations as I was in the past, because I really wanted my postdoc to be as pure for humanity as possible. And I knew that if I joined other corporations like I did before, or joined other institutions like I did before, I would have to sacrifice that purity of passion for humanity. And so one of the things that I found, for example, for me to keep me independent is, for example, to investing in Bitcoin. And it's already helping me a little bit so that I don't need to go and ask other people for money to fund my postdoc. And I'm hoping that it will build up in the future such that I will be able to do even much more. But right now, because I don't have a lot of support and funding, I can only do so much. But for my postdoc, I chose 2 topics that I'm doing right now. One of them is humanizing machines, and one of them is using music tones to influence brain frequencies. The part when I'm talking about humanizing machines, I'm talking about robots and artificial intelligence in the future, because whether we like it or not, those technologies are coming. I have a little bit of a background in those areas as well, but I chose to do the postdoc in that, arguing that we can use neurofeedback, biofeedback from humans so that these AIs and these robots become an extension of human perception, human body, but they also include empathy, sympathy, love, the things that distinguishes humanity from other species. And the part where I'm doing composing music tones to influence brain frequencies is the fact that I did information and knowledge seeking process model from a neuroscience perspective for my doctoral degree. I came to detect specific type of frequencies that humans can experience during information seeking, knowledge seeking processes. And those frequencies I was able to determine, and I have experimented with music tones to put people in those type of frequencies so that it could put their brain and cellular frequencies at that level. It could gear them towards that, which would eventually have different ramifications, and that's why I make videos for those music tunes that I compose, so I will go more in depth to it. But these are the topics that I've chosen to do for the postdoc, and I chose to do it because to me that is contributing and adding even more value to humanity from now on and in the future. But everybody can choose their action based on their own interest, based on their own passion. But we need to get into these fields and tech sciences. And please don't say that you're not good at it. You are. It's just that your perception is telling you otherwise. And you can change that perception. For example, since I was a kid, I was told that women are not good at math. Women are not good in physics. And I challenged myself and I said, no, I'm going to see whether I can do it or not. It took me many years, but I became good at it. Partly is also thanks to my father, because he was an electrician and he had always a lot of electrical circuitry and wires and whatnot in his office. So every time I visited him, I would play with those stuff, and he encouraged me. In fact, that's how I became interested in electricity, hence my fascination for brain frequency, brain waves, and electromagnetic field. And so I'm here to say that we are able to break those perceptual barriers that we carry, much of which were told to us based on a corrupted world, a corrupted government, because they wanted to, whether they knew it or not, whether they did it knowingly or not, I don't know, but they wanted to control. Controlling a human mind is amazing because you can pretty much have them do anything and say anything and believe anything. And so our generation is here to change. Our generation has a responsibility to change, to make that change. And so I encourage you to think about it and to decide for yourself and to take actions. Take care.